Welcome to the Action Playbook. I'm Jason Fox.
And I'm Coach Robin.
And we are helping leaders take action in life and business.
The editing side. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's go.
Well, welcome back to the Action Playbook. We're at episode 41, and we've got an exciting guest today. Who have you brought along, Robin?
Yeah, today I'm very excited to announce we've got Ray Freeman from ProTech Solutions. So welcome, Ray.
It's great to have you on board. Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Fantastic.
So it's I've met you through BNI, and I think that's probably where Robin first met you as well. But I've heard a little bit of your story. But take us back. So where does this journey begin for you? You're Kiwi, you're New Zealand born, but you spent a lot of time in Australia, is my understanding. So.
Yes, born in Christchurch. Yep. Gen X, apparently. Old school now, we refer to. But most recently, we've just returned from about 12 years in Australia.
Yep.
Did a lot of work over there, and we've probably been back about 18 months now, I think.
All right.
So enjoying life in the Bay. We lived halfway between Brisbane and Surface, so we really wanted a like for like move. So we thought the Bay, even though we hadn't lived here before, was pretty similar as far as New Zealand was concerned, and loved every minute of it since.
Yeah, it's definitely the mini Surface paradise. New Zealand's version of Surface, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm actually there next week.
But not with the warmth that you get over there. Climate is a little bit different.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. That's true. So currently, obviously, ProTech Solutions, my understanding is it's security and it's cleaning. So where does that journey start for you? Is that
coming back into New Zealand on the back of a pretty fat facility services career, it was more a question of whether or not I continued to travel in the same vein as I did overseas, but albeit without a phone. So coming back into New Zealand to re-establish a similar reputation to that I had in Australia would have meant 14, 16-hour days to build that lead from the front style that I'm known for. And then thereafter, if I did want to start my own business, well, ultimately I'd have to do it again. So we decided, I say I, but it was we, my wife and I, decided to just bite the bullet and really push forward. I was fortunate enough to work for a company on returning to New Zealand for around 8 months, and in that period I was able to lead the cleaning operations for the FIFA Women's World Cup at Eden Park, which was a fairly sizable operation. 5 out of those 9 home games were 48-hour turnaround, and every time we were able to set the benchmark higher and higher, which was really good, and we got massive feedback. We walked into that, or I walked into that contract with it on 3-month notice period, and within a few weeks on site we were able to get a year extension on that, and thereafter be able to negotiate a completely new contract arrangement. So it was a fairly successful tenure there. And at the same time was conducting periodicals or program cleaning across a number of Fonterra sites, polishing their floors during the night. So there's some pretty big hours through that period, and it gives you a bit of an idea as to where I was coming from when I decided to go with ProTech. Sure. I guess one of the main things with security and cleaning, unlike in my later years in Australia where it was more heavily cleaning, I've been fortunate enough to come into even though a 13-year-old reputation security, it's really, close to 30 years history to me here, and probably most known for security in New Zealand. Okay. So, I was able to, even though moving to the Bay, New Zealand's a village, a lot of people from Hamilton have moved over to the Bay and be generally still well known, even though in reality I've been away overseas for 12 years. So I've been very fortunate to start a business on the back of that.
And so how did you actually get into security?
Well, funny you say that, Robin. My Christian name is actually Raemon, Raymond, and my mother actually changed. I was named after a guy called Ray Lefevre, a good friend of my father who died of cancer when I was young. But when he was young, of course. But my mother changed the spelling of my Christian name to mean because of the meaning, and that was wise protector. So it was a bit unusual that my father bought his first hotel when I was 10 years old, and by the first opportunity I got to go into hospitality, I was 19. We still had to be 20 to drink then. So I didn't have anything. I walked in and asked for a job, and it was a bit of a funny story. I used to fight kickboxing and boxing, and I offered the owner, who became a good friend of mine over the years, a fight video, and he got halfway through the first round and he said, "Start Saturday." And it was back in the day. It was back when, in the mid-90s, when Waikato won the Ranfurly Shield, and that was that Saturday. So it was hard case, and the rest is history. Ended up working at around 700 nights over 4.5 years at that pub, and that was called Governor's Tavern.
Amazing.
Hamilton.
And that's obviously before the days. That was when business was still done on a handshake, right? There wasn't
That's right,
employment
absolutely.
contracts or...
Well, we could still smoke inside. You had to be 20 to drink. It was before photo licensing. So yeah, the good old days now. Makes us feel old to talk about it.
Awesome, man. I just want to go back to the time when you were in Australia. Give us some idea of the scale of the businesses that you were involved with there, and the team sizes that you were working with.
Well, I was very fortunate in Australia to land on my feet. I fought very hard when I went over there. I worked 3 jobs in New Zealand off the back of a failed marriage, so I had to pull a rabbit out of the hat, so to speak, to play a bit of catch-up football. So we decided to move to Australia. And I worked hard to get a job over there, and I ended up getting an opportunity as a supervisor across some waste sites. There was 3 waste sites in Brisbane, and a place called Redland City Council. And I had 3 waste sites where we used to run the gatehouses and take money for people coming to the dump, and they go across the weighbridge, and literally they would pay us. At the time I took over the contract, the contract was under siege. It was taking heavy financial abatements for failure of KPIs per month, and within a 3-month period I was able to turn that around, evaporate those financial abatements, and get the contract onto the front foot through some good operational procedures, and the CEO asked to meet me. I met him at a McDonald's, and within 2 weeks, he called me to head office and sat me down in the boardroom, surrounded by my manager at the time, who was the head of the Security Services Division, and asked me if I'd be interested in taking it over. So I thought about it overnight. It was a pretty big burden at that stage, and then he showed me the P&L, and I just about needed therapy. She was pretty serious to read. Running on serious losses month to month, but as we do as Kiwis, we get stuck in, we get on with it, and within a couple of years, I was able to chop off some of the serious losses within that division, and a lot of that was working 7 days myself to turn things around. I was wherever I could work, I would, because it saved me paying someone with money that we didn't have because we were running in the red. And it took me about 4 years, but after that 4 years, I was able to bring it into the black, able to build on more of a management structure, and we got to the point where we'd actually developed into more of an integrated service option.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second, just for the benefit of the listeners that might not know what that is. What is integrated services? Well,
integrated services is really a bundled service option. We are offering more than one service or service stream at once. The point I was leading to is that predominantly we were security, and I had a prominent client who we'd started a very high profile shopping centre with from the outset, and all she wanted is me to take. She wasn't prepared to tender it. She just wanted me to take care of security, and she said, "Well, he can take care of cleaning as well." And I said, well, hang on a sec, Pam, I don't actually know anything about cleaning apart from cleaning some nightclub toilets at 4 a.m. And she said, well, if you clean them, if you can manage cleaning half as good as you do security, you'll be fine. And so that ended up being my entrance into cleaning. But from that point within that business, we actually had a dedicated cleaning division. So I was starting to step on some other toes within the business. where they rebranded the Security Service Division as Security and Allied Services to incorporate some of the cleaning I was doing. I had a number of high-profile clients, for example, including Lorna Jane, who I used to look after personally from a security perspective, along with Craig Lowndes and some other high-profile bands and bits and pieces. But then people started to rely on me for cleaning also, and that was really in emergencies. And in Brisbane, you've got a lot of extreme weather situations over there, and so having a contractor you can depend on and is super reliable was really important. So if anything built my reputation, it was probably being the guy that they could rely on to run to the crisis or the emergency when everyone else is running away from it.
Problem solver.
So just coming back to the original question. So what was the size of those businesses that, what is the biggest business that you've been involved in?
Well, that business in particular, that was a very big family-owned business, and that was around 45 million annual revenue when I joined that business, and it probably grew to around 85. That wasn't all on the back of my contribution. Of course, it was a collective team effort, but I think it's fair to say that the team we had at the time were known as one of the best in the business. I worked for another company that was significantly smaller, probably around 10 million annual revenue. I was the GM of that. I took over in beginning of 17, worked 17 and 18, and that was a largely Brazilian owned and operated business within Brisbane. And we had around 500 to 600 staff there. Then moved to Sydney on the back of negotiation with an old client of mine who asked me if I'd relocate. He would give me the reins to take over his business, and that was a very prominent business and looked after a large proportion of all the banks in Australia. So I had around 2,000 staff across 2,500 sites. To give you an idea of the travel and the restructuring of a lot of those operations, I did around 70 flights in 2019 based out of Sydney, and the only reason I stopped that was really because of COVID and the restrictions that came with the interstate borders, which forced us really back to Brisbane. I moved back to Brisbane and back into another company fairly quickly with another 600 odd staff.
It's amazing, right?
Around $20 million business, again GM.
In 2,000 staff, I had 100, and that kept me pretty busy. But
out of that 2,000, they were direct and indirect. I had 24 direct reports across that team. Both operationally and back of house. It's fair to say.
Yeah. But I know you, and I know how you think, and you would still see those 2,000 as being part of your family and under your wing and under your protection.
I think you're only as good as the people on the ground that are doing the hard work. I think a lot of big businesses make the mistake of losing touch with what's going on the ground. It's something I've always been very conscious of and tried to keep a more of a close distance to. And know the names of as many of our staff as possible, so I can walk around a site regardless of my position and speak with them directly and personally. And I find that generally speaking, it gives you a lot more cohesion, a lot more loyalty, and ultimately a higher output and level of performance.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's that management versus leadership kind of, and it's the blend or the hybrid of that you're talking about. So it's making sure that the people are where they're supposed to be, but then knowing their names so that they feel cared for and that acknowledged.
That's right. I think learning people's names is a good skill across the board, both in security and cleaning, across your workforce, and especially in hospitality. When you're working in hospitality, it's great to be able to have a doorman remember your name when you're walking up to the door. It makes you feel like a VIP, then open the door for you and let you in. It's a place you want to keep going back to, and especially when they remember you by name and they wish you goodbye as well. It's something I've always taken pride in, working on the door, and I try and pass on to as many of our staff as I can. Is a good note between a good point of difference rather between a high quality guard and a lower quality guard.
Did you use Roadhouse as your training? The movie.
No, but I have seen it a number of times, and I have had a number of people refer to it when speaking of me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's some really good messages in that movie, right? Not just about how to treat the staff, but also the patrons and the importance of the cohesiveness of all of those relationships and the communication for that.
I had a bar on the weekend we started, and that was Roadhouse-esque.
Oh.
Yeah, we took it over, and it's quite a notorious one. I won't say which one it is, but the owner asked us if we would take it over a couple of weeks back, and met with them last week, and they were pretty excited about it. We turned up on Friday. Unfortunately, due to the weather, it was a fairly soft start. There's not many people around, which was great. But the lights came on Saturday, and she was packed. And our guards, we had 3 guards on site. I had 2 inside, and I run the line. And it was really interesting to hear the feedback from people and from the customers and also the staff as to the difference between how it had been run previously to how it was run that night. And it was my first night, prominent in this bar. But again, it was leading from the front, showing my staff how I expected it to be run. Full view in front of the police, you're on camera, and really everyone around could see what we were doing. It's a very, very busy location, and we had very, very minimal issues. I referred to it today when I got a nice message from the client thanking us very much for our efforts and the impact we had on the site last weekend, and they were considering a significant win for them. It was nice to be able to say, hey, we're just educating people. I had a fairly high-profile meeting with police yesterday, the head of liquor licensing, and the general feel was it was a significant change. It seemed a lot cleaner, the crowd, and a lot more organised than what it usually had been previously. But it's just starting at ground level. It's engaging with people. It's letting them know the house rules. What we're looking to do is lift the dress code and just start at ground level from the time people come in the door. And it's the old story too. It's pretty simple stuff. Respect out, respect in. So if you're engaging with people and you give them the level of respect that you expect, generally speaking, more times than not, you'll get it. But if you're one of those grunts and you're looking down on people, or if you think you've got a stripe on your arm and you've got some level of authority that's not necessarily warranted, those people will react, and they'll react with their feet, and they'll go somewhere else. So you need to remember, especially in hospitality, that you're in hospitality. People work hard for their money. They want to come out and have a good time. It's our priority as doormen to ensure that the first impression of them entering is one of being welcome. We lay out what the guidelines are or the boundaries are, and we wish them a good night. And when they leave and they've had a great night, well, we hope to see them again.
Yeah.
Ultimately, as I was being asked recently, what's our intent? Well, my intent at the moment is to ensure that Mount Maunganui and the Greater Bay is the most safest and secure, prominent destination in the country. And that's what we're working on at the moment within the Mount.
And you've onboarded your team with that in mind. Because I remember in my own business, the first couple of years, I assumed we had alignment, myself and the team that I had around me. I assumed we had alignment. But I later learned the importance of bringing alignment in. And part of alignment is to make sure that we understand the expectations I had of them, but then also understanding the expectations that they had of me as their leader.
I agree with you, and I can give you a pretty quick response to that. Is yes, absolutely. Your leadership will always define your workforce. Your workforce should be a reflection of your leadership. When it comes to security, not so much in cleaning, but definitely in security, I'll never ask any of my staff to do anything I'm not prepared to do. I think the difference between a boss and a leader is that a leader will show you, where a boss will tell you.
Good point.
I think that the leadership aspect in that is something that I've tried to live by. I'm not perfect on that, but it's something that I try to live by. And when I do onboard staff, I try not to discriminate. So it doesn't matter colour, creed, ethnicity. I don't care about that. I always say if people just do half of what they promised to do an interview, we'll never have a problem. First thing is reliability. Second thing is professionalism. And thirdly, to me, is a big one, is loyalty. And if I start to smell any one of those three starting to fall away, well, that's probably, we need to start working on it. Otherwise, I'm going to raise some alarm bells with that person. Otherwise, that person will be trimmed off, because at the end of the day, good management is defined on what you'll tolerate, what you'll tolerate and what you won't. I can't stand people being late to work. I can't stand people being unprofessional. I'm engaging with licensed professionals here. 2 words, licensed professionals. And then thirdly, as I said, you've got to be consistent. You've got to be consistent. You've got to turn up. You've got to be reliable. And if you can do those things, we'll never have a problem. I don't care what you do before and after work, as long as when you come into work, you understand that people are looking to you. You might be 5 minutes into your shift and having an evacuation go off. People are looking to you as a person, and it needs to direct them as to where do they go. People might be freaking out. Live shooter incident, who knows what could happen? This is what you deal with in security. People must be able to trust you and know that you are trustworthy. Yeah. And they start with those fundamentals. That's always really important to me. As I said, the last point, I changed it from loyalty to consistency. I think consistency is super important. People ask me about our business. I said, well, we're only as good as the average across my top 6 guards. My top 8 guards at the moment, well, bottom line, it's my top 6. And I'm one of those at the moment. So we're probably flattering that average a little bit. But at the end of the day, as far as the business is concerned, I can take a step back from that and look at us, and I'll look at that medium across the top six guards as to where we sit in the market. And any of those competitor companies can look at their top 6 guards and compare them to mine. That's ultimately where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
So I think every business employs someone and then says, I've employed this person to do a job, why aren't you doing the job? It sounds very clear that you've got some points of culture that you're running through with your team before they start, so they know that that's what you do expect of them. What are the sort of the steps you take when you're onboarding someone to ensure that they've got those points of culture?
I think when it comes to interviewing people, and I had an interview earlier today, I go through a reasonable pre-screening where I engage with the people, whether it be via email or by phone, and then look to meet with them for a coffee. I like to meet with them for a coffee because I don't like the rigid stigma of an interview environment, because you're not really getting the real them. If you have a coffee and it's semi-relaxed, right, tell me a bit about yourself, and you can have a bit of a laugh and a bit of a chat over a coffee. It's a lot more relaxed. And I just want to, even if it's only 20-25%, have a look at the real them. And if I don't feel I've got the real them, and I've still got question marks in the head, I'm probably 60-40 not looking to proceed with them. But I think as far as that's concerned, looking at it's the shoe on the other foot, looking at what they're looking for. An interview is 2 ways. I'm looking at a potential someone to engage someone to provide a service for me or for the company. They're looking for someone to be a potential employer and someone that they're going to commit to as well. So it's a double-edged sword in an interview, and you don't want to present hierarchical or look like you're going to be someone that's not going to appreciate them or treat them like a number. So I think being empathetic and being able to engage with someone from the outset, the way you intend to continue, is really important.
Agreed.
And that's really how I operate. It's more of a flat management style. I engage people, licensed professionals, as I said, to do their jobs. I don't want to hold their hands. I'm treating them as adults from the outset. It's up to you if you're worthy to it. If you're not, you're going to sort yourself out fairly quickly.
I'm a strong believer that consistency is one of the key traits of a good leader or a great leader, is to be that consistent. You know, treat everyone the same. Nobody gets put into a position where it was like, well, why are you treating me like this? You weren't like this with Sue last week when she did the same thing, right? So that consistency is really important. What else do you think your team would expect from you in terms of, you know, aligning expectations? What do you think they would, and I'm sure they don't verbalize it, but if you were in their shoes, what would you want you to be thinking about as the leader of that team? We mentioned consistency.
I think feeling valued and appreciated is something that's can be cheap words and a cheap cliche, but I enjoy people around me that care about what they're doing. Genuine care in whatever we do is super important, especially in services. If I feel that someone has genuine care, that they will very rarely get out of step with me, because I will support them through their rights and their wrongs. They'll have undivided support from me as long as I know they genuinely care about what they're doing and they're making their best efforts or making the best decisions they can based on the information in front of them. That's all I ask. I don't expect people to be perfect or anyone to have all of the answers. But as long as I can understand their thought process, how they come to make that decision or why they did, and they had the best intentions or best of care when it comes to the client or the situation, they'll never have an issue with me, and they'll have my support through the rights and the wrongs. And if it costs me work and I've got a staff member that's done everything they can, or so be it. We'll find something else to do.
Reminds me of one of my favourite cliches. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes,
and I
very
think
true.
It's absolutely true.
Very
right?
true.
Yeah, I learned that in my business too.
It's a great saying.
So you had these. You were working in these big businesses, and you were leading these big businesses, 2,000 strong, 600 strong. I know from my own experience that, you know, having a business with 100, the way that I was thinking as a business owner or as the leader in that business with 100 was very different to the way I was thinking or leading the business with a team of like 5. So a quick question for you there is, you know, was there any lessons that you learned working in a business that size that you've now brought into ProTech Solutions, and because you've now had a change of how you think or how you see things, that it's allowed you to think better or differently with ProTech Solutions?
I think if I was to be critical of myself over the years, I would have been more astute when it came to numbers, rather than always putting staff first. I've always been of the mentality that if you look after your people will look after you. And I've always been representing a brand. So ultimately, we're only as good as the newest, greenest staff member we have on the ground. If that person knows who's the boss is, that they know what's expected of them from the outset, I think we'll be better for it. But sometimes that has come at expense over the years. I've had a number of employers that have been quite frustrated with me, that, and one in particular I can remember echoes with me sometimes that I should spend more time on my numbers than I do on my people. And I've always been defiant to that. I've always pushed back, and I've always been very defensive and more of a people person, people manager. But I think now, coming back to your question and where I am to date, I think I'm more astute when it comes to my numbers, right, and a happy medium between my people and those numbers. Because without those numbers, I can't create new opportunities. So one leads to the other.
It's like a yin yang. Yeah. Without the people, you don't have the numbers.
That's right.
Without the numbers, you don't have the control and the management for the people.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm more acutely conscious now of those numbers, my margins, and where the money's spent. And I like my staff to be aware of that as well, again, so they can feel valued and appreciated when it comes to not sparing expense for them from the outset. I think the amount of money we spend on uniforms and kit for our staff from the outset is significant. without asking for any contribution or bond. That to me is important, that people feel good and they feel part of the team. They can come into that, they can look good and feel good from the outset.
Yeah, I agree. You don't see a lot of people coming from Australia back to New Zealand that are actually in high profile roles. It seems to be all our good people going the opposite way. So you've come the opposite way. What are some benefits from being in New Zealand, maybe starting out a business and stuff? Do you feel it's easier to start a business in New Zealand?
It's actually a really good question, Jason, because it is very difficult here. Very difficult. That said, there's 30,000 cleaning businesses in Australia, just to give you an idea of scale. I'm not sure how many there are here. I don't consider ourselves a cleaning business as such. We're an integrated business, so we have a significant point of difference, and security and cleaning in that order. But it's very difficult here at the moment. But Robin's asked a good question recently at his sales seminar we went to, as to, in your view, do you feel that we're in a recession at the moment? And of course we feel inclined to say yes, but I think it's all in the eyes of the beholder. And there was another good saying in that too: there's never miss the opportunities that a recession presents. Further to, have you recession-proofed your business? Well, ProTech has been started in the middle of a recession, so we're already recession-proofed.
Yeah.
And
can
only go up.
That's right. That's right. We're up for the fight. And as I said recently to someone, we've come back from Australia. We could have easily stayed there. We came back for family. It's not all about money. But at the moment, given the state of the New Zealand economy and our industry here in New Zealand, I feel that we're involved in the fight for the future of this country. And it's something I take very seriously. And I think as much as we can take out, we can run away from this. New Zealand's best minds could do worse than to be back here at the moment and be involved in contributing where they're most needed. There's some great minds that have left this country in the past, gone overseas and had some experience. Well, this is the time for those great minds to be coming back here and contributing, because we really need it.
Yeah, we do. And what about with the actual starting of a business? Like I always have felt, and I haven't experienced both sides of it, that perhaps Australia is a good place to go for an opportunity as far as getting a job in a company with 4,000 staff. But New Zealand seems quite an easy place to just start a business from the ground. Like, it doesn't take a lot, right? You can have a business live in a day. You can have a bank account. You can have one open on the company's register, and you can go out and give it a go, which us Kiwis are very good at. I think the opportunities to actually get off the ground and running are a little bit easier here. Or is it?
Well, you can do that in Australia as well.
Pretty similar.
You got a much bigger market to pick a piece out of. New Zealand's a lot more fickle. It's a lot more who you know. In New Zealand, you have tall poppy syndrome,
yes,
which works against you significantly here. Australia tend to cheer their winners more than New Zealand does, which I think is something that definitely goes against us. Yeah. You can be conservative, but I like to celebrate your successes, and I'll never hold back from it. If I see people doing a good job or doing well, I'll always applaud them and say, well done. I like to see people win and succeed. My good mate, Alan Nicholson, was very good at that. And if anything, now he's gone. He's been gone 4 months now. I'd like to continue that in some vein, and I try to in my own personal life, whether it be supporting people online or in person. I think we could do worse than to push and support and promote each other more in this country than always being looking to push each other down.
Yeah. Yep. As it's celebrating the wins, as
that's
you
right.
Say, that's
celebrate
what it's
your
about.
successes.
Celebrate
little
those
fist pump moments.
Yeah,
they're gold.
Yeah.
Back to your question on starting a business here, it is tough, but it's a test of character at the same time. Where there's a will, there's a way. I've been very fortunate. If you'd asked me for my two pieces of advice if you're looking to start a business in New Zealand is get in shape. Get to the gym and get yourself in shape. Get yourself on a diet. Discipline and consistency is where it starts. So get yourself in shape because you're up for the fight. There's got to be a fight. You you're going to be eating a lot less. You'll be on the noodles diet pretty quickly, as I say, because you'll have a hose coming out of your bank account. So you've got to be up for it. So you've got to be up for the fight. And the second piece of advice I'd say is have a look at the people around you. You know, you ultimately be the average of the influences you have around you and the closest to you. Make sure they're good ones. And you'll be a product of those. And I'm very fortunate to have had some great influences around me that have pushed me out of what could have been dark times to being really, really good times. I don't let the dark times over-influence me. I more look to those little bits of gold and those little bits of light, looking for the little fist pump moments every day. Little bits you can acknowledge as little wins wherever you can find them. Yep. As I said to my staff over the years, look for a smile and a laugh wherever you can find them, because especially in cleaning, it's a thankless industry. All you get is complaints, and it's hard to come up for air sometimes when everyone's beating on you. So you've got to look for a smile and a laugh wherever you can find one. And I think that's really important, just in life generally.
Yeah, I agree. We've got this little bell that we have here in the office, myself and Jason.
Yes, it's not even on a wall.
and the only rule is that we ring the bell when there's a win, right? Not how big the win is, it's just the win, and it's those, the adding up of all the little wins that result in big wins. And I mean that's the thing I've noticed with you, and from our conversations is, you don't rest on the laurels of those wins that you've had, and you've had significant wins over the last couple of months, weeks. But you don't stop there. That almost says, right, that's done. Pocket that, bank it. Now let's look for the next win, and that's such a good attitude to have. That's being proactive. It's not, okay, well, sign up a new client, great. We can take the rest of the month off now.
That's right. Yeah, I think sometimes, definitely for myself, I've gone away from the conservative approach more recently, because I felt that we've had a little bit of wind in our sails. So as you say, when the tail's up, push forward, and I've shared with our team where we're at and how we're progressing. So there's no secrets that, because I want them to feel part of something. I want them to feel that they've been in the engine room with this as it develops, rather than just, one day we'll be able to do this, and one day, people need to feel that they're a part of it. And when we get to somewhere one day, and I'm not sure what that will be and when that will be, but they can look back and know that they were part of the story. And some of those businesses that I mentioned to you earlier, there's definitely been significant chapters of those businesses' history that, to me, I'm really proud to have been a part of. And I hope that some of these people that are working with ProTech at the moment, have that same feeling one day when they're looking back on it and saying, hey, I remember when we first started. And, look at where they are now. I was part of that journey, because I won't forget.
Yeah, and I always wanted, this actually was a driver for me. I wanted to build a business and a brand where, if my team was standing around a barbecue and somebody says to them, hey, what do you do? Where do you work? And they go, well, I work at ProTech Solutions, and they say it with pride. Then I'm doing a good job. That's when I know that I'm winning.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Brand and culture around it. It's like if you worked at Rocket Lab, people are like, oh, I work at Rocket Lab. Oh, that's so exciting. That would be a New Zealand example of that. And that's all you can ever want. Then they're excited. Monday feels like a Friday. The rest of it.
Exactly.
I'm not going to get wasted on Sunday because I'm excited that I'm going to work this week in the morning, not I'm drinking to numb the week that's ahead of me, or vice versa.
Something you mentioned, and I just want to kind of circle back to that, is sharing that information about how the business is doing with your team, and I think partly I might be putting the horse before the cart here, but partly that would be one of those things that you learn working in a bigger business, the importance of transparency to build the trust with the team, and transparency is, I've found, is so empowering. both for myself and the business and the people in the business. And you mentioned contribution there as well, you know, how people, what their role is in building that story of the business. Contribution is a high need that everybody has. And transparency speaks to that as well. And that, you know, when that becomes part of the culture, I think something shifts. People buy in better when there's that openness and transparency with how the business is performing.
I agree. I think I'm in a position now, and I've always been very careful when I've worked for other people, and regardless of executive level positions and so on. Ultimately, someone else has still paid my income. So I've always been very careful as to what I tell people and what I don't. And even when it comes to dealing with one client who might ask me about another client, generally speaking, they won't get anything from me because my relationship with that client is my relationship with that client, and I won't gossip in between clients, if you like. And I don't necessarily do that now, but when it comes to the financial rewards of a business, I've always been more of a battleground general, if you like, when it comes to the bigger companies that have been organised, because generally speaking, I've walked into situations where work's been on the table for renewal. We could have lost that work. We need work, but there's jobs at stake. This is a thing with contract services. If you lose work, you lose people. If you win work, you get to create more opportunities and you get to bring more people in. So, of course, you want to be on the front foot more than you're on the back foot, because there's nothing worse than sending out those letters and telling people that they've lost their jobs and you're having to hand them over to a new company. So, I have a natural siege mentality when it comes to dealing in the contract services. So I have to, it's like going... If you wanted to use an analogy with the military, it would be going to all your sergeants and your supervisors that are on the ground working on these contracts and making sure your sergeants who are managing your platoons on the front lines all understand the objective here, because you can't afford to lose any of them. And it has to be a concerted win, concerted effort to be able to meet the objective and get the outcome. Otherwise, you could lose the battle and ultimately lose the war. If anything, I think I can remember in one of the big companies I was with, we were drafting redundancies for losing one of these big contracts, and it was a significant contract with around 800 sites. And my attitude was, well, how long have we got before it goes to tender? Well, we've got 6 months before it goes to tender. Well, we're wasting our time doing this now. We're still in the fight. We've still got time to work with. It's still ours. When they give us the notice, well, then we'll start looking at, okay, well, what we can do. Until then, we're still in the fight. Let's make sure we leave nothing in the tank and work our asses off to turn this around. And you never know. We might get a stay of execution, if you like. If not, run a chance of even renewing it. And in this case in particular, we did get over the line. We renewed an entire national banking system, with the two highest performing states that year being the only ones lost, because they simply said, well, that was the last half of the fifth year. What about the other 4 years? So they decided to give another contractor a go with those two sites, even though they were highest performing sites. That financial, we kept the rest of the states. And that was just a good example of, while you're in the fight, leave nothing in the tank.
Yeah. I think a lot of people make a mistake in a business and then they're afraid to actually call the customer and admit it and all the rest of it. But ultimately, when you make a mistake, it's actually an opportunity to create your best customers and how you could remedy that mistake.
Very much so.
Hand on heart, hey, look, I can see we've made a mistake here. This is how we're going to take care of it for you. We're going to do our best to make sure it never happens again. Goes a long way.
That's right, and I think that's the ultimate accountability, and I think that's actually a really good point too, Jason. Something I've always been good at is being that guy to front in those meetings. Some of these meetings we've had have been in some serious disaster zones where we've had bushfires, across numerous states. We've had storms and floods and all sorts of stuff, and people haven't got to site. We've got missing cleaners, we've got missing all sorts of possible chaos you can imagine. And just having a voice where their clients had someone actually front and tell them what's going on, give them some insight as to actually what's happening on the ground has been really valuable. And, you know, for me personally, not so much talking about myself, I've always found it easier to talk about the people around me. When I've been in business meetings or tender meetings where I've had an opportunity to speak, I've always found it easier to talk about my people. And if you can, you know, tell little stories about all your key people and give your clients a bit of insight as to actually what they're buying into and what they're investing into, you know, you're building a vested interest from the outset, and they're nearly quite excited about getting it over the line and getting you approved and getting started, because they want to have a look at these people that they've heard so much about. You know, and as I said, all they get from me, it's the same as I'm in business now, is that unbridled support. Again, it's not blind, but if we're getting genuine care and they're genuinely caring about what they're doing, that's all they'll get from me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this has actually been a great chat. It's almost a pity to have to wrap things up now, but you know, just to kind of summarize some of those key things that you've touched on here that I think is really valuable is, for me, is the you know, you've touched on the importance of recruitment and making sure that you're creating an environment for that consistency and also to see the real person. I really appreciate that. You spoke about your leadership style. I think it's your greatest strength. And I really want to say thank you for being so humble and being the gentleman that you are. I think everybody in your team respects that already about you. And I know that you're going to take this business to the next level. I think just before we do wrap up, though, one of the questions we like to ask guests here is, you know, what is your definition of success?
I think to leave something or be a part of something and to leave something that's bigger than you, a legacy to me would be creating opportunities for people that they remember through time. As you said, around a barbecue, having someone say proudly that they work for ProTech is something that I would love to see eventuate, and something that stands the test of time even beyond my years, that potentially my daughter or grandkids could potentially continue one day. That would be a dream. But otherwise, I think above all else, just to be a positive influence on those around me, and be a vehicle for people to earn an income and at the same time have a good time.
Love it. Absolutely love it. That is exactly the example of leadership that we look for on here. So I think our viewers and listeners are going to be able to connect with that. ProTech Solutions, I'm very excited to see where this business is going.
No, thanks very much, Robin, and great to be here. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. We'll put the social media for Facebook and your website, LinkedIn down below in the show notes so people can find you if they need security and or cleaning.
Fantastic. Very good.
And with that, it's time to take action.
Thank you.